Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you like our decorations for this event. It should say, let's April, or let's April Nova. That's the new hashtag that I've seen going around on social media. So my name's Mark Dorley. I am the director of the ethics program in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences here at Villanova, and I am very happy to welcome all of you here, and thank you for taking the time to be with us to celebrate the Praxis Award in Professional Ethics. The ethics program inaugurated this annual event in the spring of 2007, and our goal was simple: recognize and celebrate an individual for his or her outstanding commitment to the ethical ideals of his or her profession. We have been fortunate to have amazing people come to spend time with us and to receive this award. With Ms. Laker and Ms. Ruderman, God continues to bless us with extraordinary people. I'm very grateful that you're all here to help us celebrate our honorees and our vision of the Praxis Award. And of course, as I already indicated, we celebrate this in an extraordinary context of a second national championship in 3 years. We'll continue. This is where the students watch the game on Monday night, which is why the decorations. I hope if you didn't notice, we'll maybe take the time to go back during after this event. We're going to have a bit of refreshments. We made little posters of all the past recipients of the Praxis Award, so feel free to peruse them before you leave. The only thing I wanted to make note that 2 of those recipients have died since they won the award. Dr. Joel Noble, who was the very first recipient, and Dr. Milton Donaldson. Both of whom were local physicians and tremendous assets to our community. May they rest in peace. So before I continue, I want to recognize that today is a significant day, not just because we're national champions again, and not because we have Wendy and Barbara here to celebrate, but today's the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, I can't say that we picked this day for that reason, but I think it's appropriate that we celebrate the Praxis Award today and that we honor 2 members of the press who arguably were important allies for Dr. King's work for social justice. So I'd ask if we could take a moment of silence to remember Dr. King and to recommit ourselves to work for a community of justice and love. Thank you. So typically at these things, there's lots of thank yous. So I need to say thanks to a number of people. Our celebration today wouldn't be possible without the financial support and sponsorship of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, the M. Louise Fitzpatrick College of Nursing, the Villanova School of Business, and the William T. Dunn 55 Ethics Program Endowed Fund. So to Dean Lindemeyer and to Acting Dean Perry, my deepest appreciation for your generosity and support. I also want to recognize my faculty colleagues in the ethics program, Professors Mark Wilson, Catherine Eltringham, Chris Noble, Jeff Morgan, and Brett Wilmot, as well as Professor Sally Scholes, who's chair of the philosophy department, and Peter Spitaler, the chair of the Department of Theology and Religious Studies. I think we also have some journalists here from Villanova, from the Villanovan, and I didn't get to meet them, so raise your hand if you're here. Chris and those, okay, great. So Chris and Cassandra here, thank you for being here. And also we have some ethics students, Ron Berna, Eunice Shin, Gabby Manila, and Lucy Minicozy Wieland. They're studying ethics, either pursuing a minor or a concentration, so I'm happy that you're all here. Now, these things don't happen. I wish I could take credit for all the details and all the things that happen, and everything that like the thing that you have in your hand and the food you're going to eat later, organizing all of that. But I didn't have anything to do with that. So I'd like to recognize Peggy Elder, the person who makes everything go at the ethics program. So thank you, Peggy. And also a shout out to Colleen McCarthy back there. A chemical engineer, Frank. Where's Frank Vilka? And who's our work study. So thanks for being here. Okay, so I've asked Dina Lindemeyer if she would offer some words for us today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dorley, and welcome to everybody here on behalf of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, which I have the honor of serving as dean, and the ethics program, as you probably figured out if you didn't already know, actually resides within the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, but its reach extends across college boundaries to really inspire and educate students in all of our different colleges, fulfilling the university's core mission of providing an education that instills values and discernment and critical thinking in our undergraduates and graduate students. And therefore, the ethics program really plays a central role in the mission of the college and the university. It's a vital part of our liberal arts education. Every student in the college takes at least one ethics course, but it also inspires us through events like this to think about the ways in our professional lives as well as our personal lives we are making decisions based on our best understanding of ethical principles. Dr. Dorley created this award 11 years ago. And since then, it has served as an extremely beneficial reminder to us that theory is empty without praxis, if you'll forgive me, and that we can learn a great deal in Ethics 2050 in our classrooms, but we learn just as much, if not more, from observing the example of people such as our honored guests who live ethics in their daily lives, in their occupations, sometimes at great professional or even personal risk. This afternoon, our two guests, Wendy Ruderman and Barbara Laker, are investigative reporters at a time when investigative reporting is more needed probably than ever. And if you'll forgive me, just a short personal excursion off my text here. One of my favorite parts of the day is when I pad out in my bathrobe and go down to the end of my sidewalk and pick up my Philadelphia Inquirer. I don't read any other newspaper. I am a resident of the Philadelphia region, and so I read the Philadelphia Inquirer. I don't read the Times like some people I know. I read the Inquirer. And my favorite part of the Inquirer, other than the advice column, are the investigations that they do, whether it is lead contamination in Fishtown or the amazing work by our honored guests, Ms. Ruderman and Ms. Laker. So also, I'm a specialist in Russian studies, and I know from long experience and study of Russia, I know the consequences of the absence of investigative reporting in a tradition, in a media tradition. So we need this work as much, if not more, than ever. And we need local papers like the Philadelphia Daily News and the Philly Inquirer more than ever as well. So I will continue my subscription, and I like to read it in paper. I just don't like reading it online. So I'm sure you're eager to hear from our guests, but before I let you go, I do want to thank Dr. Dorley. Mark has led this program brilliantly for a number of years now, not only coordinating the curricular offerings, which are extensive, but then supporting a number of activities which he has created besides this award, such as our students participating and doing quite well in the National Ethics Bowl, in holding the regional high school ethics bowls here at Villanova. I happened to be judge last fall for one, they were adorable. The Ethics for Lunch program for colleagues on the faculty, the Undergraduate Ethics Symposium, the Ethics and War Conference that we do biannually with the U.S. Military Academy. Mark is really very unassuming. He's extremely creative and enterprising. So please join me in recognizing Dr. Mark Dorley. So now I would like to turn the podium over to Brett Wilmot, faculty member in the ethics program, assistant director, if I remember correctly, and he is going to introduce our speakers. Thank you all so much for coming.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is this okay? I'm never used to being up at the microphone. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today as we celebrate this year's Praxis Award recipients, Ms. Wendy Ruderman and Ms. Barbara Laker. I'm the Associate Director of the Ethics Program, and I've been around since its inception, and it's one of our favorite events that we do every year. It's an opportunity to take the ideas and the concepts that we teach in our classrooms and celebrate examples that we find out in the professional world and show those examples to our students. And it's a really, I think, a great opportunity. I've been given this opportunity to introduce our guests of honor simply because I had the good fortune of nominating them for this award. It was an easy choice. We've had the great pleasure of recognizing many outstanding recipients over the years, as Mark pointed out earlier, but I'm really thrilled, very happy to add Ms. Ruderman and Ms. Laker to our list. In my original nomination, I told the selection committee that these local journalists clearly exemplify the kind of ethical professionalism that the Praxis Award is meant to celebrate. In addition to fulfilling the ethical standards of their profession and their ongoing journalistic endeavors, Ms. Ruderman and Ms. Laker were awarded with the Pulitzer Prize in Investigative Journalism in 2010 for their work on police corruption in the city of Philadelphia. They overcame significant challenges in getting this story out to the public, and they have continued to draw the ire of the powerful for their efforts on our behalf. Probably a pretty good sign of your success, drawing the ire of the powerful. Their work provides us with an excellent example of the kind of professional integrity and service to the common good that we want to recognize with the Praxis Award in Professional Ethics, especially in today's political climate, where some in power would love nothing more than to control, marginalize, discredit, or even silence the press. Their work continues to remind us how important investigative journalism is for a free society that aspires to greater justice for all. In celebrating their work, we affirm Villanova's commitment to recognizing and supporting those who seek the truth in service to the common good. With this award, we make a small but important gesture of solidarity with these and other hardworking journalists who together ensure that we citizens have the information essential to the exercise of our civic duty. As appropriate for an award given by a Catholic Augustinian university, the Praxis Award in Professional Ethics celebrates exemplars in the various professions who contribute so much to the common good. The willingness of Ms. Ruderman and Ms. Laker to speak truth to power models the kind of courage that is essential for journalistic excellence. A brief review of their work quickly reveals their commitments to using the power of the press to expose injustices and to celebrate those making a positive difference in our local communities. I think both of those are equally important. In addition to their prize-winning work on police corruption, they've written about the threat of untreated mold in Philadelphia's public schools and lead levels in our poor communities, including the importance of testing young children for lead exposure. Ms. Laker has also highlighted examples of hope in communities scarred by violence and poverty, challenging narratives of despair about the people who live there and revealing their humanity and struggles to live dignified lives in spite of the many social and economic injustices they face. In telling these stories, Ms. Ruderman and Ms. Laker illuminate and educate. They help us to see more clearly the nuances of the world in which we live, details necessary for honest and productive civil and political discourse among citizens of goodwill who seek justice and who work to promote the common good. For all of these reasons, I'm so very grateful to have Ms. Ruderman and Ms. Laker here with us this afternoon so that we can thank them for their hard work on our behalf and share their example with our community as evidence of what professionalism, coupled with courage, integrity, and a commitment to justice and the common good, can achieve. Thank you very much.
Okay, before you come up here and get your award, we're going to do one more thing that you don't know about, but is a tradition that we have has come to be with this award. Our tradition has become that we ask someone who has either worked with or benefited from the work of the recipient, in this case the recipients, to offer some remarks. So at this time, I'd invite Mr. Michael Days, currently editor for Reader Engagement and vice president at the Philadelphia Media Network. At one time, he was your editor, as you know, and particularly when you won your Pulitzer Prize on the work on corruption in the Philadelphia Police Department. So, Mr. Days.
Good afternoon. You know, I cannot think of any place that I would rather be than right here in Villanova, toasting two of America's most distinguished journalists, Barbara Laker and Wendy Ruderman. And thank you, Dr. Dorley, for the honor to do so. Barbara and Wendy have earned their stellar reputations over many years of being dogged, passionate, focused on detail, and inspired by the people they have covered and the stories they have unearthed. They are also very fine human beings. They connect the dots and report the facts in a way that is beyond reproach, and no matter how long it takes, no matter the personal sacrifice to get it right. They are among the best in being the real-time antidote to the allegations our craft now faces with, dare I say, unfounded charges that we are journalists who produce fake news, that we produce biased reporting based on nothing but assumptions and innuendo. It seems like just yesterday when Wendy and then our company lawyer, Scott Bacon, our then city editor, Gar Joseph, gathered in my office to discuss if we should actually publish a story that the two have been working on for quite some time, based on a recommendation from a very good source, Benny Martinez, a 35-year-old convicted drug dealer, a con man, a drug informant, turned up at our Daily News offices to chat with Wendy and then Barbara as well about an outlandish charge. He said he was working with a narcotics cop to set up folks for selling drugs. It started out as work designed to rid his community of drug dealers, including some of his former classmates. He would buy drugs from them, turn it over to the narcotics cop, who would then get a warrant to raid the house. But then it devolved to a system based on nothing other than setting up random people, most of whom Benny had not purchased drugs from, largely designed to keep the charges coming. You know, the allegations seemed implausible, and could Benny be believed, given his shady background? Even with Barbara and Wendy's exhaustive reporting that corroborated Benny's allegations, Scott told us that there was a 50-50 chance that we would be sued, that this initial story was problematic because of Benny's sketchy past. You know, but to his credit, our lawyer was supportive on going forward, And my only question of Wendy that day was, do you believe Benny? I knew Wendy's answer on behalf of she and Barbara would be yes. No second thoughts, no sleepless nights after we decided to move ahead. The rest, as they say, is history. One amazing story led to another and another and another. And finally, the Pulitzer Prize for Investigative Journalism. You know, journalists don't pursue stories to win awards. They pursue them because in all of us, there's a desire to right wrongs, to give voice to the voiceless, to speak truth to power. But it's always terrific to see Barbara and Wendy honored because individually, they are certainly journalists on steroids. And together they are turbocharged. Now, they will be the first to tell you that they could not do their investigative reporting without police officers who have helped them. But over the years, and especially on the year-long project for which they won a Pulitzer, there were numerous threats from people who we believe to be police, striving to quash the investigation. There was an unprecedented press conference at which they were trashed repeatedly. They came to be called the Slime Sisters on a website frequented mainly by police officers. They were steely throughout and stayed focused and calm, although I can't say that much about this particular editor. They have earned all the accolades bestowed on them, especially the award given today, the Praxis Award in Professional Ethics. So I'm honored and proud to have worked with Barbara and Wendy, and I know I speak for all who have worked with them. I'm also thrilled to call them my friends. Well done. Okay.
Okay, come on up. Come on up, Barbara and Wendy. So, I'd like to present you with the Praxis Award in Professional Ethics. And what that looks like for each of you is this clock, which says, the Praxis Award in Professional Ethics. This one says, what you gotta give you the wrong one. Wendy Ruderman or Barbara Laker here, in recognition of their commitment to professional integrity, presented this 4th day of April 2018, Ethics Program, College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Villanova University.
Oh. Thank you so much.
And of course, we have to have something else there. So go ahead.
It's on us. Thank you. Got a little teary. Thanks so much. Like Jay Wright said Monday night, we feel really humbled and blessed to be here at this moment. And we can totally relate to what Inquirer Daily News sports writer Mike Sealski described as Wright's wide-eyed school kids' enthusiasm and disbelief. And he describes them riding on the bus to their road to championship and saying, turning to his assistant coaches and saying, "Can you believe this? Can you believe this?" So when we won this award, that's exactly how Barbara and I felt, sort of excited and just blessed. And especially when we look at all of the winners who preceded us, it's such an honor to be up here. We wanted to especially thank Professor Brett Wilmot, who's the Associate Director of the Ethics Program, for nominating us. To sum up his words of wisdom, knowing what is right is not always clear-cut. Everyday decisions can be fraught with nuance and shades of gray. But without ethics, a system of moral principles and standards, civilization would collapse. It's also not lost on us that today marks the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When we're reporting a difficult story with lots of challenges, Barbara and I remind ourselves of his famous quote, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that." Sorry. In our series on police corruption in Philadelphia, Tainted Justice, we strived to bring light and heat to a dark secret. We began the story uncovering that a narcotics officer was lying on search warrants to arrest people. Some were drug dealers, but some were innocent. But either way, we firmly believed we have to hold police officers to the highest standard of ethics, or else, as Professor Wilmot so rightly pointed out, civilization would collapse. It was not a popular or easy start to what would become a big scandal. The head of the city's Fraternal Order of Police, perhaps one of the most powerful political organizations in the city, hired a private investigator to try to tear apart our work. The FOP held a press conference to attack us. Narcotics officers threatened our lives and tried to intimidate us by waiting outside our workplace at night. Of course, it didn't work. We kept going, and looking back, it was either supreme stupidity or commitment to our belief that right is right and wrong is wrong. Or perhaps it was a mix of both. But we couldn't have done it without the support of Daily News editor Michael Days and our editor on this series, Gar Joseph, who were both and are both portraits in courage. And I'll let Barbara take over.
Their support propelled us to dig even deeper on what we were looking at, and what we found was an outrage. The same narcotics squad that had been lying on search warrants were barging into small bodegas, the small corner stores across the city, and robbing them. They stole cash, they stole merchandise, and helped themselves to sandwiches and drinks. In all cases, they had carefully picked their prey. The stores were run by hardworking immigrants here legally who struggled with the English language. They often came from corrupt countries where the people didn't trust banks, the government, or police, so they dealt only in cash in their stores. They would even pay the rent, all the merchandise in cash. It was amazing to us that this had been going on for years in the city by this same squad, and none of the victims had said a word about it. They just thought that being robbed by police was the cost of doing business in Philadelphia, a sort of street tax that they kept quiet about. They thought they were alone until Wendy and I found 16 store owners with the same exact story. Store owners from every corner of the city and from all different countries and backgrounds, the Dominican Republic, Korea, Jordan. They all told us the exact same story. The cops burst into their stores with guns drawn. They weren't in uniform. They had like just regular blue clothing, and they smashed the video surveillance cameras in the stores, and they cut the wires of the cameras, and then they proceeded to loot the stores. At first, they were reluctant to go on the record. They hadn't told anyone in authority about this. But Wendy and I knew that we couldn't go with this story unless they were on the record. In the end, they felt they had power in numbers, and they all 16 of them went on the record. That's one of our primary jobs as journalists, to empower people who feel like they have no power, and help lift their voices so they are finally heard. And after this story ran, it silenced most of our critics. The last part of the story or series was the hardest to nail down. We heard that one of the members of the squad was groping and sexually assaulting women during police raids at their homes. We heard these women were out there, but we didn't have names or addresses. So we pulled every single search warrant in which this particular cop had been present over several years, and then we went door to door. In addition to having people on the record, it was very important to us that we didn't ask leading questions. So Wendy and I agreed that when someone were answered the door, we just simply asked them, "Can you tell us what happened during the raid of your home?" Some of the homes were vacant, boarded up, but I'll never ever forget one Friday night in the summer. I was on a block with 5 boarded homes. I went to talk to a neighbor who lived next to one of these boarded homes. I asked this man, named Angel, if he knew anything about the woman who had once lived in that vacant home. He told me yes, her house had been raided, and after the cops left, she came downstairs, was crying on the porch, and said something really bad had just happened to her. Her name was Dagmar. I asked Angel if he could help me find Dagmar's new address. He sat on the porch for an hour and a half for me on his cell phone. He finally had the address for me. He called every single person he knew. I drove over there, but her cousin told me Dagmar wasn't home. So I waited.
Suddenly, a car pulled up. Her cousin ran over to her and told her a reporter was here, waiting for her, wanting to know what happened during the raid. Dagmar got out of the car. She walked over to me, tears running down her face. Her arms outstretched to me. She gave me a huge bear hug and said, "I've been praying for this day." And at that moment, I thought, this is why I went into journalism.
Barbara and I have worked on many stories since then. We uncovered a shady realtor who was preying on poor people, mostly minority, who wanted a piece of the American dream to own a home. He's now in federal prison. We exposed a drug counselor who was supposed to help homeless people with drug addiction. Instead, he took their Social Security income and funneled them into his so-called recovery homes, which were nothing more than drug dens. We are now working on a series that we call Toxic City, which examines environmental hazards facing poor minority children in Philadelphia. Later this month, we hope to publish a report on the conditions in Philadelphia schools and how some of the conditions cause kids to suffer and make them ill and hinder their ability to achieve academic success. Barbara and I are used to making enemies, but we view that as a sign that we are doing our jobs. And as the saying goes, the job of the newspaper is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. But that doesn't mean that we lose our humanity. Barbara and I really believe that you can be a hard-nosed journalist, adhere to ethics, but try to be a good person all at the same time. So, as President Trump tweets about fake news, we thank him. His vitriol against the media has inspired journalists to further up their game. We would argue that traditional news media has not been neutered by the current climate. Rather, reporters, particularly investigative reporters across the country and in Philadelphia, are reinvigorated and re-energized. Reporters across the country and in Philadelphia continue to tackle tough topics that honor the legacy of the era of Watergate and the Pentagon Papers. In Philadelphia, we've been reporting, two reporters, Aubrey Whalen and Michael Newell, have been doing a lot of work on uncovering drug addiction and looking at the opioid crisis in Philadelphia, and it's very important work. There's been reporting by the New York Times and the New Yorker that sparked the Me Too movement. Reporters at the Miami Herald exposed a juvenile facility where the guards rewarded teens with honey buns for fighting one another. Reporters at the Washington Post have doggedly worked to shed light on allegations of collusion and tangled interests between the White House and Russia and other foreign interests. Being ethical, persistent, fearless, truthful remain the key ingredients to a free press and a healthy democracy. We think there is one more critical tenet, that is being moral. There are hard and fast, bright line ethics in journalism. Do not sleep with sources. Do not pay people for stories. Do not plagiarize. Do not make up quotes. And then there are the harder and more nuanced realms of ethics. Barbara and I, along with our editors, deal with these kinds of ethical decisions almost on a daily basis. For instance, for a project we are working on now, we ask teachers to quietly test for toxins in schools. They risk their jobs in doing so. A teacher drew a sample of water from a fountain that tested at 44 parts per billion for lead. That's more than 10 times higher than the threshold set by the school district. Our story wasn't near ready. We had teachers still testing in schools across the city. Results were pending at the lab. Should we call the school district and tell them? The worry was that the school district might try to find out who did the testing and intimidate that teacher. We had a duty to protect our source. We also didn't want the district to put a chilling effect on the teachers who were doing testing in other schools. They were also our sources. But we didn't want kids drinking potentially poisonous water. Our editors Jim Neff, who's in charge of investigations, and Gabe Escobar, who leads all of us as managing editor, decided that we should immediately tell the district about our test result, and we did. And to the school district's credit, they replaced the water fountain with filtered water within 2 days. Yes, the decision was one of ethics, but ultimately, and more importantly, it was one of morals. So thank you so much for this award. It means a lot.
Thank you so much. So I forgot to, that's the timer. I forgot to thank some people earlier today, and that's the people that chose Wendy and Barbara for this award, and that's the Praxis Awards Selection Committee, which has representatives from across the university. So I'd like to ask them to stand when I introduce them so that everybody can see who you are. That's important too because we just announced a call for nominations for next year's award, and I think there might be copies. Yeah, there's copies on the tall tables, so please, members of the Villanova community, please grab one, and if you have some ideas, submit them. So the members are, well, I'm the chair, and then Brett Wilmot, who you've met, is also on the committee. Professor Barbara Ott of the M. Louise Fitzpatrick College of Nursing, who's not here. She's actually on safari right now. Let me say that again. She's on safari. Professor Frank Falcone of the College of Engineering, Professor Brian Ota of the Department of Chemistry, Professor Rante Bennett of the Villanova School of Business, and Professor Ellen Wertheimer of the Villanova University Charles Widger School of Law. So thank you all for your work on this. So Wendy said you make a lot of enemies. We've made a lot of friends here today. So you're always welcome here at Villanova, and I hope we'll see you again.